At 32 times the speed of sound, inside a blazing sphere of fire, 4 astronauts suddenly lost all contact with Earth. The capsule was wrapped in superheated plasma, glowing intensely as it tore through the atmosphere. For several long minutes, there was only silence. No signals, no confirmation, just uncertainty. One wrong angle during this phase could mean disaster. If the capsule entered too steeply, it could burn apart. If too shallow, it could skip off the atmosphere and be lost in space. Everything depended on precision, but this terrifying moment was only the final chapter of a mission that had already made history after more than 50 years. Because what happened before this moment changed everything we thought we knew about space travel. So the real question is simple. What exactly happened on Artemis II? Why was this mission so important? And what challenges did the astronauts face along the way? This was not just another spaceflight. It involved unexpected technical failures, the first human journey toward the moon in decades, and even strange new discoveries on the lunar surface. And perhaps most astonishing of all, this mission pushed humans farther from Earth than ever before in history. To truly understand this mission, we need to go back more than 50 years. During the 1970s, the Apollo missions marked humanity's last visits to the moon. After that, human exploration beyond low Earth orbit came to a halt. Now, the Artemis program aims to change that by returning humans to the moon and building a lasting presence there. At the center of this effort is the Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket ever built by NASA. However, its journey has been far from smooth, with delays, rising costs, and multiple technical failures, including hydrogen and helium leaks. Many people doubted it would ever launch successfully. On April 1st, 2026, the world watched as the most powerful rocket ever built prepared to leave Earth. At exactly 6:35 in the evening, engines ignited with a thunderous force. But just minutes before launch, a small concern appeared. Engineers noticed unusual readings in the flight termination system, a critical safety feature designed to destroy the rocket if it lost control. For a brief moment, tension filled the control room. A delay was announced. After careful checks, teams confirmed it was only a faulty sensor. The system was working perfectly. With that reassurance, the countdown resumed. Seconds later, the rocket lifted gracefully into the sky, marking humanity's return toward the moon after more than 50 years. Inside the spacecraft were 4 astronauts, each representing a new chapter in human exploration. Reed Wiseman served as mission commander, guiding the entire journey. Victor Glover acted as pilot, responsible for critical flight operations. Christina Koch worked as mission specialist, handling scientific tasks. Alongside them was Jeremy Hansen, making history as the first Canadian astronaut to travel toward the moon. This mission was not just an American effort. The service module powering the spacecraft was built in Europe, showing how international cooperation had become essential. Together, these astronauts symbolized a global step forward, proving that space exploration was no longer limited to one nation but shared by the world. Shortly after liftoff, the spacecraft reached orbit around Earth. The intense vibrations faded, replaced by the quiet calm of space. This phase allowed the crew to begin a full systems check. Since this was the first crewed mission using this spacecraft design, every system had to be verified carefully. During these checks, a few small but surprising issues appeared. The onboard toilet experienced a malfunction, forcing the crew to use backup methods. At the same time, the astronauts faced a more relatable problem. They could not log into their official email accounts due to a technical glitch. These minor issues did not threaten the mission, but they reminded everyone that even advanced space missions can face everyday challenges. After completing all safety checks, Mission Control gave approval for the next critical step, the trans-lunar injection. This was the moment when the spacecraft would leave Earth orbit and begin its journey toward the moon. The engine fired at precisely the right time, pushing the spacecraft onto a carefully calculated path known as a free return trajectory. This path was designed to use the gravity of both Earth and the moon. Instead of constant engine use, the spacecraft would swing around the moon and naturally return home. This method increased safety, ensuring that even if systems failed, the crew would still come back to Earth. As the spacecraft moved farther from Earth, the crew entered deep space. One of the most memorable moments came when they captured a stunning image of Earth, later called the Hello World photograph. For For the first time, the entire planet could be seen clearly in a single frame. Slowly, Earth began to shrink into the distance, transforming from a massive world into a small glowing sphere. This change had a powerful psychological effect on the crew. Looking back at their home planet from such a distance created a deep sense of isolation, but also a strong appreciation for life on Earth. It was a reminder of how small and fragile our world truly is. As the spacecraft moved deeper into space, the reality of the mission began to sink in. This was the first time in decades that humans had traveled this far from Earth, entering a region filled with unknown risks. Every system on board was being tested in conditions that had never been experienced with a crew inside this exact spacecraft. At its furthest point, the astronauts were nearly 252,000 miles away from home, farther than any human beings had ever traveled in history. The distance created a powerful sense of isolation. On top of that, the Orion spacecraft itself was still relatively new, with a crew on board for the very first time, meaning there was no long-term human flight history to fully rely on. As the spacecraft moved behind the moon, communication with Earth began to fade. Signals weakened, then disappeared completely. For 40 minutes, the crew was entirely alone, cut off from every human voice on Earth, drifting silently in deep space. Then came the most breathtaking moment of the entire mission. As Orion rounded the far side of the moon, the astronauts witnessed its surface in full detail for the first time in human history. Craters stretched across the landscape, some never clearly seen before by human eyes. The surface revealed subtle variations in color, including deep brown tones and faint greenish shades in certain regions. These details were far more vivid than anything captured in earlier missions. In a deeply emotional moment, the crew began naming newly observed craters, creating personal connections with a world that had only been studied from afar for centuries. At the same time, they witnessed extraordinary Earthrise and Earthset views, where their home planet appeared and disappeared over the lunar horizon. It was in this moment that the true scale of discovery became clear. Humans were not just observing the moon through instruments anymore. They were seeing it directly, in a way no camera, no satellite, and no previous mission had ever fully captured. The scientific importance of this mission goes far beyond exploration alone. Human vision has a much greater dynamic range than any camera sensor, allowing astronauts to perceive subtle details and contrasts that instruments might miss. The spacecraft followed a carefully calculated free return trajectory, a path shaped by gravitational forces from both Earth and the moon. This allowed it to travel safely without constant engine burns. The far side of the moon looked dramatically different because it lacks the vast volcanic plains seen on the near side. Instead, it is covered in ancient craters formed over billions of years. Unlike Apollo missions, Artemis traveled at a higher altitude, allowing for a broader view of the lunar surface, especially the South Polar region, which is a key target for future exploration. During re-entry, communication blackout occurred because of plasma formation around the spacecraft, which blocks radio signals. The angle of re-entry was critical because even a small error could lead to burning up or skipping off the atmosphere entirely. This mission was not just another spaceflight, it marked the beginning of a new era in human exploration. For the first time in generations, multiple nations worked together to send humans beyond Earth orbit. It showed that space is no longer the domain of competition alone, but of collaboration. The success of Artemis II opens the door to future missions that will build a permanent presence on the moon. That lunar base could eventually become a stepping stone toward Mars and even deeper space destinations. More importantly, it reminded humanity of something profound. For the first time in generations, we are no longer standing still on Earth. We are moving outward again, expanding the reach of human civilization beyond our home world. From a fiery re-entry through Earth's atmosphere to the silent edge of deep space, Artemis II proved one powerful truth. We are going back to the moon, and this time, we are staying. If you found this story fascinating, you will love the next video about how humans plan to build a permanent base on the moon. Thanks for watching.